Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, a small village in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. His father was a chief of the Thembu people, but after defying local authorities, he lost his title and the family moved to a different village, Kunu. Mandela was raised in a traditional African household, but his life changed when his father died, and he was taken in by Chief Jongintaba Dalindyebo, the acting regent of the Thembu people. Under the chief's care, Mandela received a formal education, something rare for black South Africans at the time. The awakening of a revolutionary. While studying at Fort Hare University, Mandela met Oliver Tambo and other future activists. They challenged the university's policies, leading to Mandela being expelled. To escape an arranged marriage, he fled to Johannesburg, where he saw firsthand the deep racial injustices of apartheid. In Johannesburg, he worked as a law clerk while studying at Witwatersrand University, where he met anti-apartheid activists of all races. Inspired by Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence, Mandela joined the African National Congress, ANC, in 1944 and helped form the ANC Youth League, pushing for a more radical approach to ending apartheid. As apartheid laws became harsher, peaceful protests were met with violence. This led Mandela to change his strategy, believing that armed resistance was the only way to defeat the brutal government. 2. The Rivonia Trial, 1963 to 1964. By the early 1960s, Mandela had co-founded Umkhonto we Sizwe, MK, meaning Spear of the Nation, an armed wing of the ANC. MK carried out sabotage against government infrastructure such as power stations and police stations to weaken the apartheid system without killing civilians. Mandela was already in prison serving a 5-year sentence when the police raided a secret MK hideout in Rivonia, a suburb of Johannesburg. They arrested key leaders and found documents proving their involvement in sabotage. Mandela and others were put on trial in 1963 in what became known as the Rivonia Trial. Mandela's famous speech. In court, Mandela gave a historic speech that shook the world. "I have walked a long road to freedom. I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." The court sentenced Mandela and his comrades to life in prison instead of execution, fearing backlash from the international community. 3. Life on Robben Island. Mandela spent 18 of his 27 years in prison on Robben Island, a brutal prison located off the coast of Cape Town. Harsh conditions. Prisoners were forced to do hard labor in a limestone quarry, breaking rocks under the scorching sun. The white wardens treated black prisoners terribly. Food rations were poor, medical care was almost non-existent, and political prisoners were kept in isolation. Mandela and his fellow prisoners resisted by organizing secret classes and demanding better conditions. They turned the prison into a university of struggle, where they educated themselves and younger prisoners. Even from behind bars, Mandela remained a leader. He negotiated small victories, such as the right to wear long pants instead of shorts, which were meant to humiliate them. During this time, Mandela's reputation grew globally. Free Mandela campaigns spread across the world, putting pressure on South Africa's government. 4. The global anti-apartheid movement. While Mandela and others were imprisoned, the fight against apartheid continued worldwide. International sanctions. In the 1970s and 1980s, many countries imposed economic sanctions on South Africa, banning trade and cutting diplomatic ties. The United Nations declared apartheid a crime against humanity in 1973. Global corporations pulled out of South Africa, further weakening its economy. Cultural and sports boycotts. South Africa was banned from the Olympics and major sporting events. Artists and musicians refused to perform there. The world isolated South Africa, increasing pressure on the apartheid regime. One of the biggest global events was the 1988 free Nelson Mandela concert at Wembley Stadium, watched by millions. This helped spread awareness and build momentum for his release. 5. The negotiations to end apartheid, 1990 to 1994. By the late 1980s, South Africa was collapsing. International sanctions, mass protests, and internal conflicts made apartheid unsustainable. In 1990, President F.W. de Klerk finally announced the unbanning of the ANC and the release of Nelson Mandela. Mandela's release, 1990, on February 11, 1990, after 27 years in prison, Mandela walked free, holding his wife Winnie Mandela's hand. Millions of people watched as he delivered a speech calling for peace and unity. The road to democracy. The transition to democracy was not peaceful. Right-wing white extremists and some black factions fought against the change, but Mandela and de Klerk negotiated a new constitution, ensuring equal rights for all. In April 1994, South Africa held its first democratic elections. Black South Africans voted for the first time, and Mandela became the first black president. 6. The lingering effects of apartheid in South Africa today. Even though apartheid officially ended, its legacy still affects South Africa and the rest of Africa. 1. Economic inequality. The white minority still owns most of the wealth and land, while black South Africans face high poverty and unemployment rates. The government has tried land reforms, but progress is slow. 2. Crime and violence. Apartheid-era policies created massive economic disparities, leading to one of the highest crime rates in the world. Gangs and drug violence are common in some townships. 3. Corruption and political struggles. The ANC, Mandela's party, has faced corruption scandals, damaging its reputation. Some South Africans feel betrayed because economic conditions haven't improved much for the poor. 4. Racial divides still exist. Many South Africans still live in racially segregated communities due to the impact of apartheid-era housing policies. Some white South Africans feel alienated by affirmative action policies meant to correct past injustices. 5. Impact on Africa as a whole. Apartheid-era conflicts affected neighboring countries like Angola, Mozambique, and Namibia. South Africa's post-apartheid struggles have discouraged some African nations from radical land reforms. Conclusion. Apartheid was a dark chapter in Africa's history, but the fight against it proved the power of unity and resistance. Nelson Mandela's leadership and sacrifice ended a brutal regime, but South Africa and Africa as a whole still struggle with its legacy. Despite these challenges, Mandela's dream of a united and equal South Africa remains a guiding vision for the future.